Welcome everybody to the Yissilmissil Productions channel. My name is Stephen Yissel, and today we are continuing our deep dive series into the Bermuda Triangle. And today is a special day because we complete the first book of Gian J. Quasar, Into the Bermuda Triangle. So I hope you're all ready. We've read all of this so far. We got a little bit left to go. This stuff is starting to get interesting, to say the least. Let's get the Illuminati up here. Awesome. Brenda says I have my coffee ready. All you get your drinks and your snacks if you need. I have my bottle of water here. I'll take a sip. Cheers to finishing today's book. We have one chapter left. And then we'll get into the follow-up next week. Let's see here. Yeah, we're on part 27. So, just getting my little notepad ready here. That's all set. We have about 11 pages. And the Coral Castle series is bleeding into this one. Bermuda Triangle came up on that show on Tuesday. If you haven't checked the Coral Castle series out, give it a chance. This last show from Tuesday covers the Bermuda Triangle a little bit, but we are getting further and further into the esoteric. I learned last night that some of these books I have are extremely rare, but this one not so much, but it is a very good resource, and Gian J. Quasar is a very good author with compiling this information. And we will learn that as we go along. So again, keep in mind this book is from 2004. And this is the first edition. And the next book is from 2017. So just keep that in mind as we read along. I try to say what year these books were published, just so you have context. But this is from 2004. So the follow-up book is just as thick. And we'll take a look at that next week. I showed a lot of books as a preview on the Coral Castle show of what we'll be looking into over there. But I have just as many books for this series as well. Oh, Brenda says I had Brussels sprouts and asparagus for dinner. Weirdly enough, I had asparagus too. It's a good job. I also had a potato, a baked potato, and some pork, and steamed broccoli, carrots, and cauliflower. And that's it for me for tonight. It's good to have the whole foods. I think it helps in the long term, so you're on the right track, Brenda. And I hope everybody's taking note of this as well. Please do your best to eat home-cooked meals. It is the best way to alleviate health problems. I, for one, thankfully am not in any pain, and I hope to keep it that way. I'll do the best I can to keep it that way. So we are on chapter 12, A Vast Horizon, an answer from without, within, and all around us. A lot of this information that we're covering, it gives me time to be pensive, but I have to digest all of this stuff. The Coral Castle energy grid stuff is just really dense information, and it's revealing new concepts that I haven't thought about. And I'm sure a lot of you watching along haven't even considered some of the things we're covering here. But let's finish this book today. We'll get started right now. Chapter 12. If we are to label why the Bermuda Triangle holds any particular relevance, it must be found in the potential to which a search for an answer has directed us. In this case, the Bermuda Triangle has forced our approach to the dawn of the final horizon, and by the slivers of sunrise breaking over its dark silhouette, inspired us to contemplate what lies beyond for our own future. There are those who prefer to remain where we began, eyes perpetually locked onto the sure foundation of that dark and unchanging silhouette, rather than lift their heads to chase the beams of light streaking into the sky. They should not be blamed. It is easier and often more respectable to blame things at hand. To chase beams of light is to chase something that cannot even leave a shadow. We have followed them to the heights of improbability and down beyond the horizon to where their source is given form only by imagination. Yet the streaks of sunrise are there. If they can really take us to the infinite, we do not know, or if they really indicate that there exists the fanciful source we sometimes wish to imagine, we cannot yet tell. Dominant among the hypotheses are things we thought we would never be confronted with, much less contemplate. Among these, there may exist bases under the ocean, established by aliens or other humans. Whether from another planet or descendants of an ancient Earth civilization interested in observing or even assessing mankind. The reason for the disappearances is offered as being caused by the electromagnetic propulsion methods of the spacecraft or even by intentional abduction. The Bermuda Triangle's specific accomplice with UFOs may be due to the fact the ocean is forever in motion and can easily dispel the evidence of a disaster, in parentheses, or presumed disaster, if a kidnapping took place, end parentheses, and therefore allay any suspicions on our part that something unusual is happening in all these disappearances. A modus operandi, not entirely far-fetched considering the lengths some people go in order to debunk even the possibility of the unexplained. On the other hand, it might equally provide the isolation for bases from which UFOs can operate, or even the right conditions for them to materialize into our dimension or world. I'm going to pause to address a comment here. Brenda had to take some pain meds for her hand. I hope it's going to recover soon and you get alleviation from that. I wonder if you need some different tuning forks as well, different frequencies. That might be something to look into. I myself haven't picked up tuning forks yet, but I do want to try that. I think there is some benefit to having that. Alright, let's continue here. However bizarre or repulsive such theories might be to many, they are not likely to go away. The idea that there are unexplained observers of mankind is hardly a new one. In ancient Hebraic writings, principally the Book of Enoch, there are repeated references to the, quote, watchers, end quote. They are classed as different from the traditional ranks of angels, and a subgroup of them are even considered to be the wicked ones who came down in Genesis, the enigmatic, quote, sons of God, end quote, who saw the daughters of men and sired an entire advanced civilization. They are not angels, cherubim, or Ophanum, but are referred to as the, quote, children of heaven, end quote. In a number of ancient writings, there are equally enigmatic references. They may be pure fables or primitive superstitions, or they may be, as is much in modern UFO lore today, over-exaggerations of unexplained aerial phenomena, capitalized on by ancient writers and priests. Our development of the air age, then the atomic age, and then the space age, has given rise to several theories that beings from other worlds might be greatly alarmed at what they have been observing on Earth, especially nuclear explosions, because these could represent a threat to them. This seems far-fetched unless we allow the supposition that they have some form of long-standing connection with or residence on the Earth, or that they in fact travel along magnetic field lines or waves to their magnetic opposites, in parentheses, in this case, Earth, end parentheses. And that they realize that if we discovered this method of travel, we could be at their doorsteps in moments, complete with deadly arsenals. One must remember that civilizations do not have to develop along the same lines. If beings of another planet stumbled on zero-point energy created by high-voltage electricity and electromagnetic fields, they might never have thought about the atomic. Splitting the nucleus of an atom may be beyond them, and something quite fascinating and disturbing to them. Several investigators of UFOs have speculated along these lines, that UFOs are assessing our flight and propulsion technology. They even point out that reports of frequent UFOs do not antedate World War II and the initiation of the atomic age. Among these, one can even include U.S. Air Force intelligence, which, in an early and confidential summation of the UFO phenomenon in 1949, expressed, quote, "Such a civilization might observe that on Earth we now have atomic bombs and are fast developing rockets. In view of the past history of mankind, they should be alarmed. We should therefore expect at this time, above all, to behold such visitations." End quote. It is interesting to note that the intelligence officer responsible for this assumed mankind had been observed by alien beings for a considerable period of time. And this opinion may have been inspired by legends of the ancient, quote, watchers, end quote, the B'nai Elohim of Genesis. And that's spelled B-N-E-Y is one word, and the second word H'-E-L-O-H-I-M. Or the originators of the ancient disc Vimanas of India. And we covered that a few parts back on this deep dive series. What is repeatedly fascinating is that so many cultures allude to such ancient craft or visitations. Why? The most important part of the consideration of any theory are the circumstances in which the plane or ship vanished. While in many cases this is simply unknown, in others they are so unusual as to suggest that the aircraft pilots and ship captains were faced with something completely foreign to them. Automatic alarms that should have sounded when disaster struck have consistently been silent. Vessels have vanished in calm weather without trace, while others lost in storms have left debris scattered over beaches. In other disappearances, messages were picked up hours after the aircraft disappeared, ran out of gas, and subsequently was assumed to be destroyed. Though this is, by our norms, completely impossible. In still other disappearances, entire planes with crews, passengers, and automatic electronic signals have been swept away even while on approach to an airport, while on radar, with no trace found whatsoever. Considering such sudden and traceless losses, it seems hard not to consider theories of sudden vortices, or time travel, and dimensional exchange, even if they are still largely only fringe science. Along with this, it is impossible not to speak about the vast underlying world within, of the atomic and subatomic world. Mankind has long wondered about the possibilities of traveling through time, and indeed has been consumed with trying to discern exactly what time is. In the atomic age, we have been able to glimpse vaguely at the mouth of its labyrinth by noting the relationship of gravity to the performance of atomic clocks, to the curvature of space, and to the speed of light, and of such things as black holes in space, and thus the relationship of mass itself to the equation. The importance of mass and shape to the invisible force fields about us is a repeating conundrum. We know by measurements of an object's fall at the poles and at the equator that acceleration and rotation affect gravity. In addition, magnetic opposition indicates that shape and mass can determine where energy reactions will also take place. But how is time affected by energy? The clue may have been so large it was invisible to us. For now we know that by its mass and speed of revolution, the Earth curves space around it. And with this comes a vectoring or curving of all the energy fields and wavelengths in space around it. Time's pathways must lie along these, and when curved, time slows. Imperceptible though it may be to all those within this field, and in parentheses, for it is normal progression to us on Earth, end parentheses, to those in different curvatures of space, there could be an alarming difference. Yet the power required to slow time, even insignificantly, seems beyond any natural process except our planet speeding through space. Yet it is equally true that we believed some metals could never melt or shatter except in very high temperatures. But John Hutchison was able to accomplish this with very weak energy and no heat at all, merely by manipulating electromagnetic waves and perhaps zero-point energy. At the same time, as these alarming effects stunned their observers, liquids registered only mild vortex action going on. Another mystery of electromagnetic wavelengths and their potentials in scalar fields and their ability to interfere with magnetic fields and then even vector electrons. Within their potential, some quantum physicists speculate that there may even lie clues to time reversals and other phenomena. The transportation and even transmutation of matter via wavelengths seems very possible if they are disrupted and then directed efficiently. So far, the Hutchison effect indicates that strong electromagnetic waves can even cause flight. In parentheses, he has produced speeds of 433 feet per second, or 295 miles per hour. End parentheses. But we are still at a loss to control and direct these. When and if we do, perhaps with control will come instantaneous travel and communication through space, and even time. But this is, again, just another example of the massive world within that is all around us. There are thousands of waves and frequencies flitting about the Earth, with numerous fields around them. We have seen in the Hutchison effect that the levitation of objects is dependent on their shape. Thus, some force fields and their vectors are dependent on, or activated by, the shape of the mass in question. The instigating factor may be how the shape of something causes it to convolute, bend, or interlock the wavelengths around them under electromagnetic manipulation. This may be associated with zero-point energy, of which so many have hopes of tying into to provide unlimited power and propulsion. But the fact that an orientation seems present might suggest there is an entirely different force within matter itself, as undiscovered as, quote, gravity, end quote, was for many centuries. If so, this force goes part and parcel with matter. The greater the mass of an object, the greater its power of orientation. This would seem a logical explanation. The Earth is the greatest mass near to us, and thus anything created on it is pulled toward it. This may explain why objects placed on their sides in Hutchison's tests did nothing, while others, when placed upright, levitated. During their forming, a force within their atoms was naturally aligned toward the greatest part of the force that is in mass. In other words, toward the Earth. It may be that there truly is more than one type of gravity, both Einstein's curvature of space around a massive object and a force within mass that orients toward the greatest part of itself. Equally, it may be wondered if this last type of, quote, gravity, end quote, is not a force at all, but a void created by several wavelengths and energy fields interacting and thereby neutralizing each other, explaining why no physicist has yet been able to find, quote, gravity, end quote. The discovery of zero-point energy may be the greatest step toward the unraveling of both gravity and time, for it may be the link between them both. Indeed, it may be the link between all things. Although we have cataloged all the atoms and know how all materials are made up of what atoms, the charged particles that make up the atom are a great mystery. They are so tiny, they can never be seen. What is different in the structure of the proton from that of the electron that makes it take a positive charge of electricity? And what is it about the electron that makes it take a negative charge of electricity? And for that matter, from where do they get this charge? Where is this constant current of energy? How can it be that these particles never lose their charge? It was in a vacuum chamber lowered to 0 degrees Kelvin, or negative 273.15 degrees Celsius, the true 0 point of all existence since all the tremendous activity in the atom ceases, that oscillations of energy were still detected. 0 point was discovered. Some background radiation exists, constantly. It cannot be in mass. It is the energy, the current, if you will, from which the particles that make up all atoms, and thus all mass, get and maintain their charge of energy in order to create the multiplicity of materials we enjoy. The proton and the electron and the neutron are perfectly formed to take the appropriate charges. And the most remarkable process begins. Mass, energy, time, and space creation. That is the significance of 0 point. It has to be before all things, and it must remain to support all things. If the charge should die out, we are plunged into the 0 point of all existence. Oof. Dr. Hal Puthoff, spelled Puthoff, may be right. Gravity may be a 0 point fluctuation. Einstein's theory of a curvature of space may indeed enable a curvature or bending of this current or wave of background radiation, this 0 point around the Earth. In doing so, orientation and attraction, gravity, may come about. This may explain why no physicist has yet discovered, quote, gravity, end quote, inasmuch as 0 point has only recently been discovered and remains mysterious as to how it can be self-generating, be everywhere, and be independent of mass. During Hutchison's tests, perhaps the fields his machines created disturbed these wavelengths, and hence the, quote, void of gravity, end quote, they create, and the objects naturally floated as if in space, free of the Earth's influence. We must keep in mind that those who have survived unexplained encounters at sea repeatedly testify to unexplained fogs, vapors, electromagnetic aberrations, and sometimes unusual lights, phenomena that suggest immense disruption of frequencies and wavelengths. Particularly interesting reports concern fogs beginning to swirl or attach themselves to aircraft or ship, indicating that friction or metal content is attractive and conductive. High-voltage electricity experiments have also created strange metallic fogs, as well as multicolored coronas. As we know, both of these have been reported in Bermuda Triangle disappearances, often in some of the most perplexing cases. If repeated reports of encounters with fogs and compass aberrations in the Bermuda Triangle and in other areas of oceans are to be accepted, it would seem that electromagnetism is the culprit, and that the ocean, with its currents, chemicals, and mass, is the accomplice. How together they create these force field disruptions, however, remains teasingly out of our reach at present, just as Hutchison's electromagnetic effects have accomplished similar phenomena in a lab. But electromagnetism's relation to gravity, time, and the like leaves, quote, disappearance, end quote, open to interpretation. It does not seem to be beyond nature's power to imitate Hutchison's work, provided the right circumstances are present. The estimated voltage potential of the atmosphere is enormous, about 200,000 watts, since it seems to require the sea, the ancient enigma it always possessed, and which our generation pompously removed, is firmly replaced. There is also the possibility put forward, and a rather interesting one, that we are contributing to these effects by our pollution of the atmosphere, and therefore the oceans, through modern-day technology and the burning of fossil fuels. In this light, we may be witnessing an unplanned experiment that is going awry, for unlike a lab, we cannot control the greater routine of the Earth. At the very least, we should not ignore the possibility that we might be to blame in some respect. W.H. McCrae himself, a distinguished cosmologist, saliently observes the prospects for the universe from the theories of its origins. Quote, the naive view implies that the universe suddenly came into existence and found a complex system of physical laws waiting to be obeyed. Actually, it seems more natural to suppose that the physical universe and the laws of physics are interdependent. This leads us to expect that if the universe changes in the large, then its laws might also change in a way that could not be predicted. End quote. Is it logical to assume that we might be witnessing a small example of this on our own planet? Our changes in the chemical makeup of the Earth may first begin to show themselves in peculiar ways, which on the face of it may seem completely harmless, like unusual fogs, electromagnetic anomalies, and so forth. But from the point of view of somebody in proximity to such phenomena, it may be disastrous, since these could be the only signs that the frequencies and electromagnetic wavelengths in the vicinity are disturbed. In the West, we tend to see things by their appearance and not as their substance. With such a mindset, we tend to overlook the vast complexity of the subatomic world and the force fields all about us. We see a human being as a figure and forget the molecular, cellular, and electromagnetic machine that it is. An example of this perfect molecular orchestration can be found in the human brain. Unfortunately, an often overlooked commodity by humans themselves, for we have learned to take for granted its daily functions. And for its relationship to, quote, time, end quote, an apt analogy was made a long time ago. This was an 1895 novel by H.G. Wells, The Time Machine, foretelling the popular notion of time travel. Trying to convince his colleagues, the time traveler says, quote, "That is the germ of my great discovery. But you are wrong to say that we cannot move about in time. For instance, if I am recalling an incident very vividly, I go back to the instant of its occurrence. I become absent-minded, as you say. I jump back for a moment. Of course, we have no means of staying back for any length of time, any more than a savage or an animal has of staying 6 feet above the ground. But a civilized man is better off than a savage in this respect. He can go up against gravitation in a balloon, and why should he not hope ultimately he will be able to stop or accelerate his drift along the time dimension?" End quote. Or, as the traveler concludes, quote, "Go the other way." End quote. Hey Juan, good to see you. Welcome to the show. We got 6 pages left, and then we're done with the book. But we're not done with the series. The series is long from being over. The ability of the human memory, illustrated so clearly above by H.G. Wells, is in fact the marvelous working of electricity along predetermined pathways in the human brain, based on minerals, vitamins, acids, proteins, hormones, and various electrical impulses created by them, mixed together at the right time under the right and proper functioning of the body's chemistry. An analogy to our own Earth's complexity. Our brains can produce a blurry or bright image of a past event, in color or black and white, moving or still. Through the chemical process, the human eyes, ears, and brain are like a camera and recorder, a medium for electric signals that project the image into the brain for storage and retrieval, complete with sound, yet it does not need to cast it upon a screen or to use a projector. With the advent of the computer age, perhaps we are in a better position than ever to understand the vast machine of the human body, and especially the nervous system. It has often been said that we only use 10% of our brains. This, however, may prove false in light of computer engineering. The greatest bulk of computer hardware is the, quote, hard disk, end quote, designed for storage so that the tiny processor, the actual computing device, can access information and commands in order to operate efficiently at correct speeds, not unlike the ratio in size and function of the cerebrum to the small area protected by the corpus callosum, where the tiny pituitary gland sets the pace for all functions. A great part of our brain may in fact be a massive hard disk capable of unlimited storage, retraining everything ever seen and retaining everything ever seen and experienced. Perhaps explaining why later in life we suddenly recall events we had not thought about for 50 years. If they had not been saved somewhere, the mental images could not be brought back up into, what shall we call it now? RAM? And this is capital RAM, so random access memory. In computer terms, I'll describe this quickly. Random access memory, those are sticks that are in a computer. If you run on a desktop, they're easy to see. They're put together in pairs. You either have 2 or 4 of them, and that's the board memory for the motherboard. And in some cases, on some computers, if you like have too many browser tabs open, have too many programs running at once, the RAM is maxed out, and then things start to slow down because there's not enough memory to perform those tasks. A computer's random access memory can be likened to our own mind during daily activities, essentially what people view on their computer monitor during their work. Considering that the brain is also responsible for psychomotor functions, and in parentheses, of which a desktop computer need not worry, end parentheses, the actual area devoted to memory must be remarkably smaller than our own computer hard disks, yet capable of infinitely more storage, billions and billions of terabytes. In conjunction with the brain, the nervous system also has functions reminiscent of computers, or vice versa, as the case may be. During sleep at night, several automated processes occur that suggest a mechanism closely aligned to, quote, scan disk, end quote, is checking the body. The autonomic nervous system checks to see if everything is functioning and attached. The heart may beat faster temporarily. Breathing may alter or shut off for 10 seconds, along with a whole host of other, quote, system checks, end quote. Delays between one check and another may even in the future be used to indicate where a problem is in the body between these points, as, quote, scan disk, end quote, has stopped its system check and is trying to identify a problem and repair it by sending forth a host of immune system chemicals and nutrients, including human growth hormone, which is released in greatest quantity during deep sleep to literally begin bodily rejuvenation. We must remember the maxim, quote, for dust thou art, end quote, that essentially all that we are made of, or the basis of chemicals our own body can create, exist in the earth, in our atmosphere and oceans. Considering the power of the brain, the potential chemical interactions in the entire earth for creating phenomena are incomprehensible. Several researchers into electromagnetic effects have come to the conclusion that many of the phenomenal events we have recorded throughout history, and which were then subsequently attributed to the supernatural, have an understandable origin elsewhere. Concerning his personal experience, Dr. Ivan Lima has written, quote, my research made me believe that this phenomenon is related to an event that is disturbing, inexplicable, and yet undiscovered. But it is a realistic, physical, and transitory event created by nature that humanity thinks to be just a psychic phenomenon, end quote. Commenting on the wide range of effects related to, quote, poltergeist, end quote, activity, Alfred Budden has observed that fires start behind locked doors and in enclosed places impossible to reach easily. Furniture moves about, objects levitate and sometimes fly around the room, water mysteriously vanishes and reappears. Quote, objects do appear to arrive from nowhere and seem to vanish just as strangely, end quote. Iron bars are found twisted and broken, and mirrors are shattered. Everything noted in the Hutchison effect, and perhaps in the triangle. So that's another name to take note of, Alfred Budden. Budden, on poltergeists. In his investigation of one house, quote, haunted, end quote, by these same effects, Budden took a magnetic field meter. Quote, it soon became clear to me as I went from room to room that the place was subject to sudden and powerful power surges. I could have foreseen this, even if I had not developed the electromagnetic pollution approach, and in parentheses, for which I am known, end parentheses, for the understanding of anomalies, as there was a 40-foot tall radio mast for transmitting line-of-sight microwave signals erected just 5 feet away from the outside wall. Apparently, as the planning and safety authorities do not regard sitting power lines over residential properties as hazardous to health, a microwave tower is thought of as nothing to be concerned about. End quote. We are familiar with other sources of interference with our natural wavelengths, such as sunspots, but we remain ignorant of what our own tampering can do to these vital force fields and wavelengths. Do we now confuse the natural signals with our own cellular, satellite, telephone, microwave, and other radio signals, causing us to, quote, stir up the pot, end quote, and create aberrations? From this last point of view, it is clear that the potential exists for man to create changes accidentally and to not even be aware he is doing it. Such destruction may have come to past civilizations without their knowing it, if they walked in paths similar to the ones we are now walking. Some of the great upheavals of early legends may indeed have been in the Atlantic, perhaps in areas that are now the Caribbean and the Bermuda Triangle. While these may have caused latent tensions that may make the area still prone today to electromagnetic anomalies, one must still wonder if these electromagnetic anomalies are not reminders of a past cataclysm, but harbingers of a future one which we ourselves may be bringing. Then the sorry cycle of history repeats itself. Retrogression, barbarism, slow climb back to city building, with future man denying that any cataclysm or super civilization ever could have existed before and brought its destruction. That's an eerie thought. But here we are today. The mass media claims there's no super civilization. This is a repeating warning in the Edgar Cayce records. While it may seem easy to ignore such warnings due to the method by which they have been presented to us through the channel of trances, There still lie on the bottom of parts of the Bermuda Triangle and in other areas of continental shelves around the Atlantic the buried remains of an unidentified civilization. Casey's readings have appeared prescient in many ways, foretelling in a strange way UFO and USO movements in the Triangle, buried ruins under Bimini, and universal forces and machines by which they were manipulated to give the cumulative effect of what zero-point energy now seems capable. Although his warnings about future upheavals have here so far failed miserably, the overall story of his Atlantis and its end may impart us to a much-needed parable when we reach the point of his fabled Atlantis. And it seems we will. As an object lesson, it may prevent us in the future from going too far, as other civilizations may have done in the past. A view of Cassian Atlantis in this light seems more acceptable, and whether fact or fiction, if it prevents us from fulfilling its destiny, it has accomplished something valuable. Likewise, so has the Bermuda Triangle of missing planes and ships, since it has drawn our attention to the patterns below the sea as a proverb of foolish abuse. You know, this is just making me think now. If there really is some sort of energy generator that's under the Atlantic Ocean, and it's making planes and people disappear, and boats, what's to say that at its height of use, it didn't just make the whole city of Atlantis disappear? What if it moved into a different dimension? And the one that's here got obliterated from that move. So, like, not all pieces of the city moved with it. And all we find on the bottom of the ocean are the remnants that didn't get transferred over during the height of that generator's capacity. And now that generator is broken, and it goes on and off at random, and that's when we get these disappearances of planes and people. The Bermuda Triangle calls to mind so much we can learn from. Of powers all around us, of past misfortunes that could avert future and tragic reenactments, our own inadequacies as a species, and a respect for the greater design in nature that we often overlook. Armed with this knowledge, in future we may be more hesitant than we would otherwise have been to tamper with nature unwisely, seeing its perfect and delicate design. Mystery should not cause us to recoil, nor make us cower, deny, or even worship. It is an invitation to look and to learn. When aircraft flew straight into the ground while flying around mountains, we did not attribute the crash to, quote, mountain gods, end quote, and prostrate ourselves. Nor did we dismiss it as of no significance. Investigation led to the discovery of wind shear. The sky, the sea, this entire planet have been conquered because of tragedies. Other worlds within and without will undoubtedly be conquered with their share of the same. The Bermuda Triangle's presumed tragedies, in parentheses, since there is little evidence of death, end parentheses, may lead us on the road to conquering time and space, for their abode lies over that vast horizon whose crest the triangle has made us approach. There is no such thing as an empty or vain act unless we choose to make them that through ridicule and dismissal, and the pursuit of even, quote, unconventional theories, end quote, has enriched the study. In his humorous article, quote, Zen and the Art of Debunkery, end quote, San Francisco journalist Daniel Drasin, spelled Drasin, plays the satirical advisor to debunkers on how to perfect their art publicly. He begins under general debunkery. Quote, before commencing to debunk, prepare your equipment. Equipment needed, 1 armchair, end quote. In the long body of his advice, one point strikes a familiar chord. Quote, equate nature's laws with our current understanding of nature's laws. Then label all concepts such as anti-gravity or interdimensional mobility as mere flights of fancy. And subquote, because what present-day science cannot explain cannot possibly exist, end subquote. Then if an anomalous craft is reported to have hovered silently, made right-angled turns at supersonic speeds, or appeared and disappeared instantly, you may summarily dismiss the report, end quote. But the reality of one such point of debunking, seen and promoted far too often, justifiably elicits our feelings of contempt. As Drasin's article states, quote, label any poorly understood phenomenon as, subquote, occult, and subquote, fringe, paranormal, metaphysical, mystical, supernatural, or new age. This will get most mainstream scientists off the case immediately on purely emotional grounds. If you're lucky, this may delay any responsible investigation of such phenomena by decades or even centuries, end quote. It is time we grew beyond this. If the debunkers of old had not insisted that such phenomenon as poltergeists were supernatural, priests would not have been called in to exorcise what were really electromagnetic anomalies, and today we might be hundreds of years wiser about electromagnetism. We might, in fact, have gone to the stars in ways we can only dream of today. Instead, we sit in the midst of a battery of ridicule from naysayers. Mankind now prepares to fulfill what earlier generations thought impossible. We plan to travel to Mars, to colonize other worlds. Our science fiction has eerily gained the status of, quote, prophecy, end quote. Things dreamed about decades ago, even hundreds of years, first by Jules Verne and then by others, have and are coming to pass. We prepare for greater travels than Jonathan Swift could imagine. We stand ready to embark upon the principles of immortality and eternal life beyond the imagination of Mary Shelley. Whether we like it or not, we are guided by the hopes of the future expressed in science fiction, in esoteric debates, and in fringe or, quote, mad, end quote, science of hyperspace, dimensions, space colonization, and travel in the space-time continuum. We must be ready to meet what we will, and dismissing their eventual advent may prove a tragic blunder, however pert some of the debunkers' comments may seem. I'm just going to take a note of Mary Shelley. Jonathan Swift. And you know, we'll take note of Jules Verne. Because I really haven't looked into much of him. Hey, Zenray, good to see you. Zenray always goes back and rewatches the replays and the re-uploads. I thank you for that, Zen. We're in the final stretch here. It was good. We'll end under an hour and a half here. If the Bermuda Triangle reminds us of this potential and inspires us to look more deeply into the blueprint of nature, then those who died or at least disappeared in the triangle did not do so in vain. They were shipmasters and pilots, adventurers and explorers who braved an already dangerous and tumultuous world of the sea and sky. In doing so, their loss may unexpectedly guide us to the future energies from which we may all profit, and to future forms of travel by which we may explore space and other worlds. And their loss may have sobered us enough that now, for the first time, we may be able to use these forces to edify mankind instead of obliterating him. We stand on the threshold of worlds without and worlds within. We can now look into a gene and see a greater complexity than anything man can create. Our generation is the first to discover planets outside our solar system. Our horizons are constantly being extended, whether through our greatest telescopes or through our smallest microscopes. The immense, dizzying complexity of our galaxy is merely a macrocosm of the microcosm out of which it is built, the atomic world of which we ourselves are composed. A brilliant microbiologist, Dr. Michael Denton, has observed, quote, "To grasp the reality of life as it has been revealed by molecular biology, we must magnify a cell 1,000 million times until it is 20 kilometers in diameter and resembles a giant airship large enough to cover a great city like London or New York." 1,000 million times. That's 1 billion times. So you have to magnify a cell 1 billion times in order for it to look like an airship? Large enough to cover a great city like London and New York. What we would then see would be an object of unparalleled complexity and adaptive design. On the surface of the cell, we would see millions of openings, like the portholes of a vast spaceship, opening and closing to allow a continual stream of materials to flow in and out. If we were to enter one of these openings, we would find ourselves in a world of supreme technology and bewildering complexity. End quote. Of the opposite, the infinity of the universe, astronomer J.C. Maxwell has said, quote, "In the heavens we discover by their light stars so distant that no material thing can ever have passed from one to another. And yet this light tells us also that each of them is built up of molecules of the same kinds that we find on Earth." End quote. Everywhere the proton is still the proton, the electron is still the electron. Now perhaps we can add 0 point in everywhere. Right here is the gateway to the universe. The ocean starts at our dock and leads us across the sea to new lands. The subatomic ocean connects us with even more and can lead us across the universe to new worlds, within and without. They collide everywhere. They work intertwined. Mass, shape, energy, time, and space. Can this energy be churned into vortices? Can proton and electron spins be redirected? Can this energy bend space? Bend time? Is there really enough energy to do this on Earth? Is there really enough zero-point energy in a shoebox of the quantum vacuum to disintegrate the Earth? We shouldn't wonder, after what splitting only the uranium atom culminated in at Alamogordo, New Mexico, on July 16, 1945. We have too long denied that a blueprint exists. The unexplained are the keynotes of its greater orchestration throughout nature, critical parts of the whole that we are drawing our attention to the future and to the future of exploration. Well, in the long run, it's true. We go back to our habit again, and with immovable assurance in our dominion over that small twirling globe, we handle it, size it up, or at the very least, just dust it. We interpret events, improvise, and extrapolate them to fit into our current frame of mind. Life goes on as before, and mystery seems far from our daily lives. We forget. More immediate things crowd our minds. There is an answer somewhere, of course, in time. We go on our way. That globe will continue to spin until the end. What will an answer bring? Things we ridicule today? Time will tell. And that is the end of Into the Bermuda Triangle by Gian J. Quasar. So we have completed 2 books in this series, and we're going to start book 3 next week. It is the follow-up to what we just read. And it's planned all the way through January. So we're going to have a solid 3 months of reading this next book, the 3rd book in this series that we're putting together here. Let's read the comments here. Zenry says, oh, Andreas is here. Hello, Andreas. Zenry says, I've seen photos of a cell like this from electromagnetic magnification. It's pretty cool. Yeah, especially like the live videos of like the 2D microscope stuff. And Beyond the Box says, I'll tell you, I know what the end of the world feels like after today. I woke up and everything was off. Internet, phone, everything. Well, maybe that's the end of the digital world, but that's not going to be the end of the world. Hold on a minute. You see, when all the internet goes offline and all electricity goes out, at least I'll still have these books. And I can read them by fire. No problem. This is the next book we will be starting next week. The Bermuda Triangle 2. And this was published in 2017. It is a first edition, so I do my best to try to get first editions here. But if you notice on this cover, There's a big skull. And there's a tiny little skull right there. On the eye. But this book will keep us busy through January. It is the follow-up to the book we just finished today. These go together. These are by the same author. 2004, 2017. So we'll be a little more up to date. 21-year-old book, and now we're gonna look at an 8-year-old book. So a little more up to date. And as always, we'll read the back of the back cover here. And I have all of the shows like organized up on the channel. You can see it. We're gonna cover this sometimes 2 chapters, but most of the time 1 chapter at a time. But there's 10 chapters total. Some of them are a little longer than others, but we're gonna get through all of them. And let me just see what we have up to here. January 22nd. So this is the next 3 months of this series, okay? Not to be daunting or anything, but we have to take our time with this to absorb the information. And it's the only way to do it. And then after this, we're going to look into a few more Gian J books. He has entire books dedicated to specific disappearances. Like some of the military planes. I'm not going to recall them all right off the top of my head here. But he has 2 different books covering 2 different disappearances. And I plan to cover those after we get through this. And then after that, right now it's up in the air. But I think it'll become clearer as we get toward the end of that. But we got a whole 3 months that we'll be covering this book. And we will go page by page, chapter by chapter. And hopefully new things will come to light for us in this. And it's, what, 13 years after the book we just finished. So this is the follow-up to it. And it's brand spanking new for being a first edition. This must have just been like sitting in some warehouse for a long time. There's like no creases or anything on this thing. You want to see some of the other books by Gian J. Quasar? Scarlet Autumn, Jack the Ripper. Distant Horizons, A Passage into Oblivion. So Distant Horizons and A Passage into Oblivion, those are the 2 other books that we'll read after this one that focus on Bermuda Triangle disappearances. Then there's Soma, which I don't know what Soma is. I'll have to look into that. Then he covers Recasting Bigfoot and They Flew into Oblivion, which we also have. So we have 3 other books after this by Gian J. Quasar to cover. We definitely have They Flew into Oblivion. We definitely have A Passage into Oblivion. I'm not sure about Distant Horizons. That might be a novella. I'm not sure. But either way, we're going to be spending a lot more time on this. And you know, I might update the intro. I might add a few more things to it. Just in like celebration of completing the book we just read today, Into the Bermuda Triangle. And also celebrating the start of the follow-up to what we just read, which is right here. Zenray says, maybe what I saw was an AI video of it. It was in 3D when I think about it. Well, so Brenda brings up a good point. Brenda asks, why was Jack the Ripper never caught? I think he was a cop. There's speculation that Jack the Ripper was also H.H. Holmes. And H.H. Holmes was a mass murderer during the World's Fair in Chicago. Who knows, though? That was a speculation that came up in the novella Devil in the White City, which covered Daniel Burnham, the architect, drawing the blueprints of the White City, which became the location of the World's Fair in Chicago. And at the same time, there was a parallel story running in the novella of H.H. Holmes. And that book, Devil in the White City, the film rights were purchased by Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio a little over a decade ago. And they have a habit of doing this where they lock in film rights for books before they actually get around to filming them. But I think Leonardo DiCaprio was supposed to star in it as H.H. Holmes. But I don't know. There's a lot of people that could play H.H. Holmes. If you want to talk about like a real world horror story, H.H. Holmes is one of those horror stories. Maybe we'll cover, because I wanted to actually cover the Chicago World's Fair and H.H. Holmes on this channel, and I do have a pretty detailed book on H.H. Holmes with, I got it signed by the author. I went to, I think it was like Horror Hound Convention, something like that. I'm not sure where exactly we went to grab that, because it's usually in Ohio. I don't know if we actually traveled over there. I went with my buddy Dominic to one of those conventions, and the author was there, and he was selling his book, so I bought it. And again, I just buy books that I think are interesting to me, and then they sit on my shelf, and then all of a sudden they become super rare, and people are trying to sell them for 10 grand on eBay. So I learned that last night about one of them I have. I was just like, holy crap. Didn't expect that to happen, but I'm not... The thought crossed my mind to put it up for like 9 grand and see what happens, if it would sell over the other one that's up right now. But the information in that book in particular, I do not want to give up right now. I like having hard copies of things. So that's not going anywhere. And I have a lot of books that are out of print. And I do want to get older books. I already have a few older ones. I have stuff on Civil War, on Abraham Lincoln's stories and speeches. I still have to do a series on that. So, I'll be getting other series started on this channel. I've just become so consumed with everything that I've been working on around here, and then also income-driven jobs and opportunities. That's sucking up my time as well. So the stuff, like the content I've been wanting to do for members only on this channel, I apologize that I haven't gotten around to what I've promised. So eventually I will deliver on all of that stuff. It's just I got swept away with everything going on in life, and Above all else, the memberships are also keeping me on track to doing these public shows weekly. Because otherwise, I would have fallen off of this a long time ago, I imagine. But, it's good. I need the inspiration, and, I like doing this on a weekly basis. We're reading twice a week here, chapter by chapter. We're reading at least 2 chapters a week on this channel. And we will get back to Let's Talk About It on Sundays. This next weekend will probably be the last weekend of hiatus because I have to do my signature collecting. It's the last Sunday that I can do it. I believe that following Saturday on November 1st is when it's due. So I think, like, really, since it's a... Like with political candidates, I think you have to do stuff at the end of day on Friday, don't you? And Halloween's I don't think it's a federal holiday. Alright, let's check the chat here. Brenda says, I would like to go back in time. So I think I need to go look into him and Jack the Ripper timeline. Me, you, and Chad should look into him. Zenray says, I'm learning the world is a stage. And Brenda says, yes, Chad, it is. I have known that for years. I've been trying to talk to people about it, but no one listens. Zenray says, oh, we'll talk about it. LOL. Well, Brenda and Zenray, let me tell you something. Something I found out today. The first publicly documented person to have taken the Jabba Jabba Jabba, their name was William Shakespeare. Not the playwright. This is a guy that's living today that has that same name. But William Shakespeare also said the world is a stage, didn't they? Or, you know, when things... So I'll share a quick story real quick. I was pulling into a parking lot last week, and there was this woman walking from left to right. They walked like in front of the path where I was pulling into the lot, and she was already finishing walking like out of the line of driving. So I didn't have to brake or anything, and I went into the parking lot down to the end, and I parked. I went into the shop. I picked up my vape stuff, and I left within about 2 minutes. I get back in my vehicle, and I pull out of my parking space and go to leave the same way that I entered, and this woman is walking like she repeated what she was doing when I drove in. Like she reset and is now walking that same path. Like she was cutting across the parking lot like she was trying to get to the corner to the sidewalk. But then she's doing the exact same path when I'm leaving. So what did she do? Double back? Is she just going back and forth? Or did I experience a Matrix deja vu? There's things where, like, you're traveling and you have these NPC cars show up and, like, stall you. I literally, while I'm driving around, I call that Matrix shit, okay? And, of course, this world is all just a giant program, right? It's a living, breathing program. And you know, there's no need for anybody here that has a YouTube channel, as well as myself, there's no need for us to withhold information. Not being like, oh, I got this really good thing that nobody... No, you can't be doing that here. We need to get information out to people. So no longer should we be saying, oh, look at what I have, and nobody's going to find out because nobody can understand. We can't do that anymore. We have a responsibility as video creators and storytellers and public figures to get this information out to people. No matter what the other people would think about it that are still asleep. That isn't for them yet. It's for them when they wake up, but it's not for them right now. And so we shouldn't be put into this state of confusion and undecisiveness and like what to reveal when. No, we need to just get this information out now. That's what I say. Brenda asks, is that the first time you've seen that? In recent times, yes. But as you know, things are... The veil's opening. There's portals and vortexes. But then there's veil shifts. I view those as three different, unique things. And you know, Brenda, the information that you're sitting on, you need to get that out to the public too. I don't care how many people that are like actors and musicians that are now playing different people in the public eye. You need to get that information out there, sister. You need to get it out there on your channel. No more sitting on it like, oh, I got this thing. Like, no, don't do that anymore. I have book. I'll be open here. I have some books about telepathy that I am just holding off on. But I do want to read it on this channel. Stuff where this thought manipulates reality. And it's nothing taboo as far as I'm concerned, because your positive thoughts create your reality. If you're sitting here thinking negative thoughts all the time, like, oh, poor me, you're reinforcing that negativity. Even if you have to, in your own perspective, lie to yourself that things are going to get better, then they will. But if you sit in that, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, you attract that negativity to you, and it attaches just like the fog on the side of these planes that go into the triangle and disappear. I think the time for waiting is over. I've been doing this show for, what, 7-8 months now? And I feel like I barely scratched the surface. We've gone over so many instances of disappearances and weird anomalies, but not one single explanation is satisfactory to us, is it? I think there's time warps. I think there's time slips. You go to Gettysburg and even Antietam, which I was at a few weeks ago now. There's sightings of soldiers that are not reenactors from today. But they're not ghostly. Like, I watched a reel earlier today, like ghostly apparitions became a thing after using a projector to show scary movies. Back, like, in the late 1800s. As far as I can recall. Ghosts, before then, appeared as solid physical people. People couldn't tell the difference between a ghost and a person until someone was like, hey, yeah, whoever you're talking to, you're just sitting here alone. Like, you're not talking to anybody. And then they look again and the person's gone. That's what a ghost was back in like the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, 1500s. So I think there's time overlaps that happen. And I think in areas where, I don't know if Gettysburg has these higher frequency ley lines, but there's something going on with the land there. And these time slips happen there. And I recently learned that Antietam has the same thing happening. I kept my eye out. I looked for other people in uniform. I was the only one in uniform. And I can guarantee you I'm from this present time, whatever year we're in now. Because even that's a lie, what we're told. We used to have 13 months, now it's 12 months. Time appears to be moving faster for us. Other days it's slower, but for the most part it seems faster. And that even goes for the children too, apparently. The children are experiencing time moving faster. It's not just time moved slower when we were younger. From a historical perspective, it may have indeed moved slower in the past, and now it is speeding up, and we're all experiencing that in real time. So either way, this realm has a lot of mysteries to it, but everything's gonna be okay with your faith in Jesus Christ. Everything's okay. The UFOs, the aliens go away when you invoke Jesus Christ's name. I'm not on here to be religious or preachy. I have faith in Jesus Christ. I don't follow the Catholic or Christian religion. The church is within us. It is not a building to go to on Sundays to go worship. The church is within us. We are our body is a temple, and we are the church. And through our faith in Jesus Christ, all is possible. And these aliens, Bigfoot, you name it, demonic entities, DDNs, jinns, all of these things respond to the name Jesus Christ. And I think that is very powerful within itself. And you can't exclude this from everything that we're talking about here. Hopefully in this new book we'll have some encounters where people who survived going through the Bermuda Triangle say they only survived because they invoked the name Jesus Christ. We don't know. But we'll find out in the next 3 months as we get through the book. Look at this sucker. We can get through it a lot faster, but really, I like to keep this to 2-hour shows. I don't like going longer than that. It just becomes too much. And I want people to be able to sit down and watch this in one sitting without breaking it up. Alright, hold on. Let me catch up with the chat here, because I was just talking. Brenda says it's a fat holiday. LOL. Yeah, Halloween. Yeah, it's all about eating candy, isn't it? Brenda also says, yeah, but when you work with someone and try to tell her, but she says, I don't believe that time comes to... Or, hold on, let me reread that. Yeah, but when you work with someone and try to tell her, but she says, I don't believe that time comes to just let her find out on her own. I assume you're talking about someone we know. Also begins with the first letter of my name. Right. We'll keep that under wraps there. Brenda also says, oh, I know things will get better. LOL, I always say, don't worry, it will be fine. Yes, and I think that positively reinforces things for you and others who also speak those words, because you have to speak these words of positivity in order for it to have effect on you and others around you. Brenda says, I want us to go there, Steve. I think you're talking about Gettysburg. Yeah, we have to go. I was talking with my dad the other night about how my dad and I have to go back to Gettysburg because we barely scratched the surface over there. And I'm sure it'll be the same thing when we go a second time, and then when I go with Brenda for our first time, like, it's all gonna just be scratching the surface. You have to live in Gettysburg for, like, years before you, like, have a true understanding of everything that happened there. Brenda says, you should have stood out there and see if anyone would have thought you were a ghost, lol. You know, the real challenge would have been parking the car far enough away and then walking over to Miller's cornfield and just wandering around the field. My uncle was watching people as they passed, and he said a lot of people were, like, doing double takes to look at me. And really, that's not why I wear the uniform. It's out of respect of those, our ancestors. So, I'm just trying to be a proper portrayal of a soldier. But, if you have somebody taking photographs with a modern camera, like 10 feet away from you, it kind of ruins that illusion. I don't want to trick anybody into them thinking I'm a real soldier, because the accounts of people seeing actual soldiers there, like, that's all documented. People have seen what they thought were reenactors walking along the sides of the roads, and then it turns out there was nobody there. Brenda says, we are the Father's temple. That's right. Andreas says, all will bend the knee to the King. Yes, Jesus Christ. All will bend the knee to the King Jesus Christ. Andreas also says, I think I went through a glitch or something. I was getting some money off of my dresser. I found the same exact amount of money twice. I did thank God if that was him. Yeah, you know, there's some really odd occurrences that go on like that. And I'll bring that up as they occur. Like, I'm surprised I didn't mention, it might have been a little over a week ago. It might have been last Friday when that happened with the lady. So this is my first time sharing it, besides Tuesday's show with Coral Castle, because, like, I'll share stuff on that show, but I share a little more here with my, like, daily life and odd occurrences. Brenda says, now you got me looking for my wallet, Andreas. Yeah, where's mine at? I'm going to be stopping at the store to see if I got any new shipments in over at the Walmart. But yeah, that's gonna pretty much cover it for today. If I find anything new, if I have any other strange occurrences happen, I'll let you guys know here on Bermuda Triangle series. And the Sunday show, Let's Talk About It, will return on November 2nd. Absolutely. Because this Sunday, I need to use it to gather signatures. It's part of my secondary income. I need it. I need to get it done. And it's only until the 31st, and that's it. And then it's on to another side hustle, right? I'm the king of side hustles. But that's neither here nor there. I've learned to become adaptable in this world, so it's just what I'm dealt here. And I also got a few video projects to wrap up for some clients, so just a little bit of everything. Keeps me interested and entertained and busy. But I'm not strictly trying to keep myself busy. I have a $10 keyboard that I've used for the past 7 years. And I picked up a $2 keyboard at a garage sale earlier this year that will replace this one once this goes. It's beautiful. I love finding deals like that. I like the basic keyboard with no lights, just one USB plug. It's a normal keyboard here. Verbatim is the brand. And now I'm thinking like, yeah, $10 is too much. I'll just go to these garage sales and grab $2 keyboards that are brand new, that nobody used. If I pick up like 5 keyboards, I won't probably need another keyboard for the rest of my life. Make them last fucking 100 years. We'll see if this one lasts 10 years. The A key, the C key, the D key, the S key, those are all starting to go. And right side shift. And as well as like there's an impression starting to happen on the middle of the button because I've been pressing the shift so much. But yeah. Brenda says, I'm in a good mood today and I don't know why. Well, it's 'cause you're here with me, Brenda. That's why. I'm spreading my positivity to you. Mwah. Alright, I'm going to end this show. But thank you all for being here. Thank you, Gian J. Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Brenda. You guys are awesome being here live. And thank you to everybody watching the show after the fact. And I will get the rest of the series uploaded as re-uploads. The thing that has stalled me that I just haven't gotten around to is editing the one Bermuda Triangle show where my whole computer shut down in the middle of the show. And somehow I was able to jump back into the stream. So there's like a little gap of black that I need to go into my editing program, cut that out, render the video file out into a new file, and then upload that where there's no blank spot in there. That's what's been holding me up with re-uploading the lives. But thankfully I only have like 6 or 7 lives to upload. It's not too bad yet, but I need to get around to doing it so it doesn't pile up any further. But this will do it for today. I really appreciate y'all being here again. And until the next one, class dismissed.